We start off with the beginning of the second episode, which is actually where we do get that epic shot of her possibly killing the 3 guards with lightning. Seriously, why does she seem so much more powerful? Then again, the bad guys usually do, now that I think about it. Both here and pretty much everywhere else. Yeah. Nightmare Moon turns into a puff of smoke, flies away, and we get to the meat of the episode, so to speak. Twilight rushes back to the library, which Rainbow Dash, of course, follows, along bringing with all the other members of the main 6 in their journey. Once Twilight arrives, she tucks in Spike, who actually passed out once he saw Nightmare Moon. Of course, this is the point where she says he's a baby dragon, that he needs his sleep. And I call... See, the thing is, Spike is a dragon. He is considered a baby dragon, but based on everything else we later learn about dragons, it would seem that's based purely on the fact that he is young for a dragon, who dragons appear to be able to live for hundreds upon thousands of years. At least that is the implication. So he's only a baby dragon in the sense of how long they live. Now, the term itself has thankfully been phased out in more recent seasons, and in fact for a while now. But the fact is that the term itself irritates me, but more than that, it's what this moment represents. It represents that, more often than not, despite how useful a dragon, even an so-called infantile one, how useful it would be if they took him out on their adventures and to fight the bad guys more often. And you might be wondering, well, he's young, he's a child, you know, she doesn't want him to get hurt. But here's the thing, he is tougher than most ponies. He can do things that most ponies can't. Dragons like to snack on gemstones like they are candy in this universe. Now, outside of having the jaws to crush a gemstone, you know, and the teeth aren't going to break in doing so, the stomach acid required to do so is kind of ridiculous. And that's not even touching on the most outrageous of the things that dragons can do in this universe. And I might touch on that in another video, but the fact is that not taking him with you is stupid. Really, really stupid. And it just irritates me that they don't do that. Seriously. Yes, he's tired. He's an infant, supposedly, but he's freaking, it gets on my nerves. The fact that he's my favorite character doesn't really help. So anyway, Twilight's new friends show up. Rainbow Dash accusing her that she's apparently a spy, which, of course, Applejack refutes, which, while nice that she supports Twilight at this point, even though, you know what, you barely know her. She could totally be a spy. Under the circumstances, it actually seems really likely. But no, we're just gonna trust the pony that we've known for less than 24 hours, you know, and again, it's fine, they're right, it would be stupid if they didn't trust her, but it's also kind of stupid that they do. Twilight is looking for the book about the elements of harmony, which, if you'll remember, we learned about in the introductory prologue narration storybook thing. Here.
The elements of harmony.
As such, they are the only things that can defeat Nightmare Moon. Now, of course, the elements of harmony consist, like so many other magical items, being the representation of something. This being, of course... Well, I'll just let Twilight rattle them off for me.
Kindness, laughter, generosity, honesty, and loyalty.
Also, unsubtlety is unsubtle. We know... You know what? Okay, yes, this is meant for children, but... Sometimes I feel like if children are really as stupid as we make them out to be, I feel like it's probably because we keep doing stuff like that. So Twilight is telling them about this, and we see the puff of smoke that is apparently Nightmare Moon floating outside the window, which while useful, I really do question some of the abilities she apparently has throughout this second half where we actually get, acquainted with her. But she goes for the elements herself because, of course, she knows about them. She's felt their power before, and as such, she goes away. They are said to be located in the Everfree Forest, which, while the girls react rather dramatically to, claiming it to be unnatural, I'm just wondering who came up with that name, because all things considered, that's probably one of the more clever names for a forest that you're not supposed to go into in a magical fantasy world. I mean, look at the example of Harry Potter. I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, but I am familiar enough, and I do like the series. But really, Forbidden Forest, could you be any more unoriginal, J.K. Rowling? But instead, we get Everfree Forest, which is actually really clever as far as I'm concerned. So they venture in, Pinky making a bad joke, which again exemplifies the problem with both the good and the bad of the characterization in this episode. They go in, they talk about it. Twilight asks some questions because she's never actually heard of the Everfree Forest, although the way it's treated in later episodes would make you think otherwise. Then again, Twilight does appear to have been a recluse before this episode, so maybe she actually hasn't heard about it, and it's common knowledge to everybody else. But of course, in response, Rainbow Dash decides to be a bit of a... And, so Nightmare Moon decides to be both the villain, trying to essentially kill our heroes, show for little girls, and makes sure that a cliff falls out from under them. While at the same time acting as the sort of... Well, you could almost say she teaches them about the nature of their element, so to speak. Or at the very least allows us, the audience, to become aware of examples so that it's, slightly more obvious than it already is. Now, of course, the two Pegasus hop into action. Well, really Rainbow Dash, because Fluttershy is probably the most Earth Pony Pegasus I have ever seen. They rescue the two other ponies, specifically Pinky and Rarity, respectively, while, of course, Applejack manages to snag a root, which is sticking out of the ground on the slope they are currently falling down, while Twilight, the one with the magic, and while I can understand in Rarity's case, because she's more of a savant when it comes to magic than anything else, Twilight, on the other hand, is a jack of all trades when it comes to magic, if not a full-on master. So the fact that she can't, I don't know, teleport herself away from the cliff probably bothers me, but then I don't want to be one of those people nitpicking every small thing in the show. I nitpicked enough as it is. Anyway, Applejack lets go of the root so that she can try and rescue Twilight. And we are given her first example of one of the elements, in this case being honesty. Then we get, of course, the fact that, Twilight lets go because Applejack told her to. She could have died, but the two Pegasus saved her life because, Applejack couldn't have just said that those two were there, but whatever. And finally, we move on. Twilight finally showing the sign that maybe, just maybe, having friends isn't such a bad thing. And they move on to the next trial. Kindness, which is the element that Fluttershy represents, which I will give her she is probably the best representation of an individual element in the group. Fluttershy showcases her element, but not before we get a really good example of, again, why I love Rarity, even though she is third down on my list of favorites, but still, she maintains it well. By actually kicking a Manticore in the face. Because not only do we have those here, but, again, it's a Manticore. So, yeah, the fashionista kicked a Manticore in the face. Seriously, you know what? Why is this show so awesome? I mean, I know why it's awesome, but seriously, I'm sure there are those of you who don't. I'm just curious, do you get it? I mean, I feel like I'm trying to convey it, but I'm not sure if I'm doing that well. So if I'm conveying it well, please tell me. And so, Fluttershy shows kindness to the animal, and they reference an entirely different myth I can't remember the name of, but I will leave the name of it here. And removes a thorn from the Manticore's paw. And then licks her like a dog. And they move on again. Twilight asking Fluttershy about her, you know, how she knew about the thorn in the paw of the Manticore, where she replies,
I didn't. Sometimes we all just need to be shown a little kindness.
And of course, this once again reinforces the slow progression of Twilight realizing, it's okay for me to have friends. Also, apparently Nightmare Moon was the thorn. Seriously, what exactly are the limit to her powers here? Like, I'm just really curious, because if people complain about Celestia not getting things done when hits the fan, but Luna is around even less, and yet if these powers are just her when she's Nightmare Moon, okay, but if she can do any of these things, her powers seems pretty OP here. Not as compared to some villains in this show, but let's be fair, there is really no way to outdo this guy. And we move on to the next trials / attempt to kill / well, yeah. The first two trials and/or attempts by Nightmare Moon to stop them from getting the elements of harmony, it's pretty clear, I feel, that she's trying to literally kill them. She literally has a cliff fall from under them and then has them be attacked by a vicious animal. But in her third attempt, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not entirely sure what she's going for, and it opens up something that I both like and dislike. In this case, it's something I like about the show, but it's also something I dislike, specifically this moment in particular. We get the third trial, which occurs with Nightmare Moon making a bunch of trees look scary. Like something out of, again, a forbidden forest of sorts. Which I guess makes that I feel like, is that another fantasy cliche, or is it just a cliche in general? But, regardless, everybody is scared for some reason, and Pinky just kind of laughs, and then she starts to sing. And they even kind of lampshade the fact that she's going to sing. And I've got nothing against this. I like the fact that this show has songs. In fact, I like quite a few of the songs that this show has produced and made. But here's the thing, this song is probably, despite being sung by my favorite of the main six, not the best. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's good, especially if you're a child, but all things considered, it's not as not the kind of earworm like, say, even Winter Wrap-Up. I have my problems with that song too, but at the very least, this one is, it's not quite as memorable, it's not quite as good. And to be fair, yeah, this is the first episode, so I guess I'll give them a kind of pass, but at the same time, I'm not as big a fan of it, though there are parts of it that I can actually enjoy. But moreover, I think that this particular trial, while a good example of Pinky being Pinky and the fact that she's the element of laughter, really isn't the best way to go with this. So yeah, not the best way. The second to last trial is for Rarity, though again, that's not necessarily clear, and this kind of just happens that way, where each of them proves themselves in one way or another. Really, if I didn't know they were destined to be the element bearers, I would totally, think this was a little bit contrived. But in a world where magic dictates almost everything, I can totally accept that. So, they come across a river, a very, very turbulent river, and they meet one of the many things to affect the fandom as a whole, Stephen Magnet. I'm going to be honest, as I've been throughout this thing that I'm doing, I don't even know what it is anymore. I don't like Stephen Magnet. There's, again, like with Fluttershy, I can't think of a word here, but I don't care as much, so I'm not going to... but anyway, it's probably has something to do with the fact that his problem, the reason the river's so turbulent is because he's shaking it up by moving his long serpent body. Oh, did I forget to mention, freaking, if you can't tell, Stephen Magnet is a sea monster. Because you know what? Let's just continue with the number of weird, seriously, the number of sapient animals in this series needs to be like, there needs to be a limit. There needs to be a limit for what is and what isn't sapient. And apparently the limit is giraffes. Because yeah, we're gonna make all the four-hooved animals sapient, but not the giraffe for some reason. This doesn't bother me as much as some people, but it does bother me. And it raises so many questions. Oh, so many questions. But, in this case, and the reason Stephen Magnet is causing the river to be so turbulent is because he has lost half of his mustache. Outside of the fact that something with scales shouldn't be able to grow hair at all. Seriously, why keep that true with the dragons, but not with the sea serpent? His very flamboyant self, he's really quite distraught about it. While everybody else is indifferent to this, Rarity decides that this being a crime against fabulosity, there's a term I never thought I would use, decides to literally remove one of Stephen Magnet's scales and cut off her own tail, which, you know, is fine, but they make it seem like she, I don't know, killed herself, killed Stephen Magnet. It's very unclear what they were going for in this joke, but regardless, she cuts off her own tail and it attaches with magic. And you know what? All things considered, it's a bit trivial and it's a bit minor, like, you know, like the last one. But all things considered, I do like this showing of her generosity a little bit more than I did with the laughter from Pinky. Again, these trials fluctuate in their severity, and Twilight never technically goes through one because she's the main character, so you know, protagonist powers. Then of course we get to the final test, and of course to the location of the elements of harmony themselves, which just so happens to be, you know, Princess Celestia and Luna's freaking castle. Yeah, apparently before Canterlot, they lived in this place, which ended up becoming the Everfree Forest, which brings up some serious questions. I mean, I can understand why Celestia relocated it. I'm just questioning, you're not going to leave, I mean, you're not going to do something about the Everfree, because I think it wasn't quite as overgrown then, and probably not as dangerous, or unnatural, as the main six call it. Anyway, Rainbow reattaches what is a rope bridge. I don't know if there was a stone bridge or not, but, you know, I'm probably thinking of that alternate future from the Season 5 finale, but here Rainbow crosses it to try and reconnect it, and this is a good use of something that not a lot of shows with people with superpowers use. Yes, they're magical ponies, but it's still technically superpowers. She flies to reconnect the bridge, because, you know, that's actually a smart thing to do. Of course, the idiot ball still occurs where they forget to use their flying on occasion, but this is actually a good first showing for the pilot two-parter. And so Rainbow Dash finally gets her test, which in this case is being tested by the Shadow Balls, who are the darker, more evil version of the Wonderbolts who she wants to become a member of. Of course, the test here, of course, and again, this is clearly just the writers disconnecting from the fact that these are attempts via Nightmare Moon to stop them. But in this case, she attempts to tempt Rainbow Dash. Of course, she's all well and for it. She's all about joining their group, despite the fact that they're obviously evil. Until, they make her choose between them and her friends, which, easy choice. She is the element of loyalty, and, she's... Well, let me just show you.
Thank you for the offer, I mean. But I'm afraid I have to say no.
Yeah, this is actually a really good example of her being humble. At least I think it's humble. Is that humble? No, not humble, but she's being... maybe humble, I don't know, but she's being really, really nice, and I like that this is the first example of it, because she can be really irritating at times, again, but still, then again, any character can be irritating at times, even if you like them, and in this case, I think that she comes out better for it. She shows that she's not going to abandon her friends. And she reconnects the bridge, and they all go over to the castle. Also, all three of these members of the Shadow Bolts are in fact Nightmare Moon transformed via smoke, which again, what is the limit of her powers? I really want to know this. It doesn't make any sense. Seriously, what happened to her that she gets all these abilities, but we never see her use them? So they finally find the elements of harmony, which, despite the grand name and their depiction in the book, seem to be rocks. Not even rocks, more like balls of marble with distinctive shapes in each. Twilight believes she can activate the elements with a spark, which is, as noted earlier, prophesized about in the book. But she doesn't know what the spark is, especially since she doesn't know what the sixth element is. So her friends, which like at this point they pretty much are her friends, even if she hasn't realized it yet, but we'll get there, go off to give her some room, which again, giving her room, I mean she did ask for it, but at the same time they outright leave the room they're in, and then she gets teleported an adjacent sort of tower in the castle for Nightmare Moon to attempt to destroy the elements and therefore enact her evil plan, to bring out the moon. And here's a minor, but I feel notable problem with this. She moves them from the throne room of the castle to a tower. Now that's all well and fine. And to be fair, if it weren't for the light shining from, I don't know, the light of the magic, then the main six would never have found them probably anyway. But still, I feel like that's kind of an oversight on Nightmare's part of, you're trying to defeat these people and stop them from stopping you by destroying these magical artifacts. So why wouldn't you go a little bit farther away? Anywhere else really, but still, you stay in the castle. That seems like a major oversight. Now, Twilight, of course, plays at being tough in an attempt to bluff Nightmare, which works, and she tries to activate the elements of harmony. But she gets knocked back, and her attempt didn't work anyway. Even though we do get a brief moment of panic from Nightmare Moon, which is nice, but still didn't work. And then Nightmare seemingly destroys the elements of harmony. But then, Twilight, all intents and purposes, they fail. I'd say that this is probably one of the more egregious failings, is the lack of tension here. Granted, again, show for little girls. I think they could have done better. But regardless, it lasts for about 3 seconds before we hear the rest of the main six coming up the stairs. They're calling for Twilight, and Twilight, we literally see a spark, conspicuously, I think, shaped almost like her cutie mark in her eyes, showing that the spark has happened. The spark, the prophesied spark, has occurred in her. The fact that her name is Twilight Sparkle does not help that, in my opinion. It's like very obvious. But then, of course, the main six, the rest of the main six show up, and Twilight boasters, they are the spirits of the elements of harmony, which shows that despite the lack of physical bodies up until that point, that the magic of the elements exists in them, and they are the element bearers, as I've been pointing out for a good portion of this review. And so they embody their elements, they are activated, and then a magical friendship rainbow laser of destruction hits Nightmare Moon in one of the one of the really surprisingly epic moments from this, again, pilot for a little girl show. Still can't get over it. No matter how much I love the show, I still can't get over it. And so everything is great, and then the sun rises. And this is a big part, and it just supports my theory. Again, it's never outright stated, but the fact that Celestia raises the sun immediately after the defeat of Nightmare Moon showcases very specifically, I think, that she was hiding of her own free will. She hadn't been put anywhere. And that she planned this whole thing as a sort of test for both Twilight and the other element bearers, the main six, to showcase their heroism and to defeat Luna, aka Nightmare Moon, her sister, former princess of the night. And again, it works. It's a bit of a ridiculous... You know what? No, I'll get to that in a bit. But let me just recap the rest of this. So basically, they've defeated Nightmare Moon. Celestia shows up. She congratulates them all on a job well done. She explains how she knew what was coming, though, again, how much she planned for is really not clear. And then, she feels happy that her student has accepted friendship and goes over to her now normal sister, and who is now Luna again. She doesn't quite look like she will later, but I think that's more of her adjusting to being herself again. Well, that and the animators and the people behind the show not having a finalized design ready yet. Also, is it just me, or does Luna look like very similar to past generations' versions of MLP? There's just something about her, maybe not their face, but the body design that really kind of reminds me a lot of it, and I don't know how I feel about that because I'm not a fan of, obviously, the past generations. Not to shun anybody who likes those, but I mean, I've never met or seen anybody who has, so if you're out there, I'm curious. Explain to me why you like it, and maybe, I don't know if I'll watch it, but I'll listen to you. I am curious about that. But regardless, Luna has returned, and peace, the day is saved thanks to the main six. And they, of course, celebrate the return of Luna, and, of course, the summer happens to be the summer sun celebration and all that. And it's glorious. It's great. It's celebration. Pinky even, transitions it into a party using her weird fourth wall breaking powers. Boom. Hell, she even ends the episode on a fourth wall break, but again, just so. I'd like to now, I'm not sure if the citizens were aware who Luna was. I mean, I guess they must have, but at the same time, are they aware that she was Nightmare Moon? And what exactly did Celestia say happened to her in the last 1,000 years? There are really an annoying amount of unanswered questions that are never going to get answered because they really aren't relevant to the story, but I don't know. I'm just being an overly nitpicky fanboy. But anyway, let's move on to my overall thoughts and feelings about this first two-part episode pilot for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Alright, what can I say about these two episodes? Well, overall, I enjoyed them. I wouldn't have gotten into this series otherwise, and generally, if I don't like something, I stop watching halfway through an episode. But I managed to get through both of these and enjoyed it enough that I am now consider myself a full-on Brony. But these episodes do have problems. There's a rule I have when it comes to making shows that I personally believe all people behind said show should follow to the letter, and that is to make sure that every episode that follows the first is better than the last. In this case, we have to account for the fact that this two-parter counts as one story. So any individual faults that both, and so I've created a rating system based on 6 categories, sometimes 7. These categories include story, visuals, pacing, writing, entertainment, and characters. On occasion, it will include lore, assuming that I feel it impacts the piece enough. Assuming that lore is included, it will go hand in hand with story, as I feel the two have the most in common, and will either be a benefit or detriment to the other. Each category can be given a score from 0 to 12, with the exception of entertainment, which I feel can be infinite depending on the thing you are watching. Based on the overall score and how entertained I am, the episode will be given a rank and a grade. Here are the individual scores, and the overall score of 61. The grade and rank for these 2 episodes are A- and good, respectively. Overall, I'd say that these episodes' biggest problems are the writing, which is sad because Lauren Faust wrote these herself, and these are the only episodes that she wrote entirely and without any assistance. The writing is by no means bad, but it is flawed. And if that's all I can say about it, then I'd say that we could have gotten worse. The other big problem would have to be a few minor concepts that didn't quite work out when it came to execution. But overall, I'd say that everything came out okay, and so this is why overall I can say that the scores and grades and everything else that when it comes to this episode are pretty good, which is why it got the rank of good. The only other notable problem I would say that exists is probably the fact that there are a few issues when it comes to characterization. Most notably with Spike, Fluttershy, and Applejack. Of course, I explained my problems with Spike during the whole of the review, but when it comes to Applejack and Fluttershy, I feel like I didn't quite explain myself as well as I could have. Applejack is my least favorite among the main 6, yes, but she also has the best overall dynamic when it comes to her family, and this happens to be one of the most endearing parts of the series as a whole. Their family also happens to be a unique one, structurally speaking, when it comes to these kinds of children's programs. Having not 2 parents and at least 2 children, as is the norm, but in fact 3 siblings and 1 grandmother having raised them. This is unique, and we rarely get anything except, of course, for the extended family members until recently, and of course, the occasionally interesting ones like, say, Babs Seed and Goldie Delicious. Fluttershy, meanwhile, while forgettable, that is more a fault of mine than it is any with the series, and therefore it's something I have to work on. And more than often, her episodes are some of my favorites, or at least the ones I find the most entertaining, and she has gotten better and more recently has become a far more confident person or pony and character overall. So these 2 may be on the bottom when it comes to the main 6, but overall they mean a lot to me in my heart. Cliche, perhaps, but I'm a cliche, romantic, absolute doofus when it comes to stuff like this. Beyond any of this, I found that the episode had solid story and writing on its side, and I enjoyed it and was entertained overall. So I hope that you all enjoyed this, because I certainly enjoyed this episode and in making this video for you, mostly. And I hope you come back for more. Please like, comment, and subscribe. This has been Mike, the ringmaster of the Imagination Circus.
I don't know where I should begin to describe all the reasons I've chosen to be in what is sure to be the one and only of its kind. To be a part of you, not just a fandom, but a family. Proud to be a Brony. Long ago, if you had asked me what I watch in my spare time, though I probably wouldn't tell you what was really on my mind. But I've been thinking of a reason I should hide, and I begin myself to imagine it would be for when it feels so good inside. Why can't I mention that I'm shy and a timid, loving mind? How she can be herself near animals, such as away from her own kind. Why can't I mention Pinkie Pie and the way she can act up in like me sometimes? See, I used to hate that I liked my little pony. Yeah. Not anymore. I'm proud to be a Brony. Yeah. Many try to make me feel embarrassed. There are types I've been in me, but they tell me I'm the one with problems. They're the ones who are insane. So for those who want but won't admit it, you shouldn't feel like that, 'cause you could be 20% cooler. To get flow. Why don't you mention the rainbow dash and her acrobatic skill? She would try all that anything to get on little hill. But don't you mention that Bojack took a battle on a southern style power will. See, you don't have to fake that you hate my little pony. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shout it out. I'm proud to be a Brony. I'm proud to be Brony, my little pony. I used to wonder what friendship could be, my little pony. Until you all shared its magic with me. Winter wrap-up, winter wrap-up. Let's take the holiday tree. Twilight from winter wrap-up. So much rain and sleet. It's sunny and misty. The colors are so redeeming. We cut to my cupcakes, cupcakes, cupcakes. And now she's also ladylike, but even though she's screaming, whether she could take it in the fight. And I'm gonna mention Twilight, but she's kind of good. Also, I would sexually, but taking after any day. And how about you? Would you do what I do before? Hey, I'm asking